How'd you meet Jimmy?
Well, when I was involved with a company, Mountain Railroad Records,
Okay.
and we put out
With um
Stephen.
with Steven. Okay, I just introduced. I got a chance to interview Steven
yeah.
and meet him today.
Yeah. So that was in 1970, it's either 76 or 77. I can't remember.
Okay.
You know, so we became good friends. And then,
Now, how are you and Steve? How did you and Steven know each other at that point?
well, because I was going out with and living with Stephen's ex-sister-in-law,
Oh, okay.
you know, in Madison.
Oh,
And so, yeah.
you were
Jeannie-
both in Madison at that time?
Well, Rockdale,
Okay.
which is just outside, you know. So Jeannie, the woman I was with, was married to Stephen's brother.
Okay.
And Jeannie and I had classes together. We were both going to Wisconsin. And we were just kind of nodding acquaintances, you know, hi, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And then after college, we both started working for Dane County Social Services, which was a fluke. We just, you know, small world department, I guess. Started going out, started living together. But that was my original connection to Stephen and
Okay.
some of the musicians.
But you guys got the record company together before this record company was together before this, or
Yes.
After, okay.
Yeah. The
So this-
record company came about because of Charlotte's Web.
All right, that's what I was wondering. So Charlotte's Web was introducing you to a lot of different
Yeah.
artists that hadn't been recorded yet, I assume.
Yeah. Well, some had. I mean, you know,
Well, Jim had and
we had guys that had million-selling records
performing there.
on our label,
Okay.
but we'd catch them on the way down or the way up.
Right.
But you know, I mean, they were all great guys.
Yeah, I wasn't meaning it that way, but
Yeah.
I was thinking that when Steven talked about him and Jim first
Yeah.
meeting,
Yeah.
that
So
it was
Mountain Railroad put out 3 of Jim's albums.
right. The three of the 4 that I have on my wall. Thank you very much.
Okay. Then he went to Flying Fish. Mountain Railroad went under,
Oh, okay.
and then Jim went to Flying Fish. So, you know, but we were all still in the same geographical area.
Right.
Madison, Rockford.
So were you doing the engineering portion of it, or
I was doing the business end.
oh, just on the business end?
Yeah.
Was that what you were studying in school was business, or?
Well, I majored in philosophy. I just figured that's natural progression, philosophy to business.
Business. Wonderful. Well, you might as well know what's coming to you. So,
Right.
yeah, that's a good way to good side turn. Yeah.
But then Jim, I was living out in the country, south of Madison, and Jim bought a schoolhouse that was about a mile from me as the crow flies. But we had known each other, and he just happened to find this schoolhouse there. So when he moved in there, we became like best friends.
Now, which
Years.
wife was this with?
Well, no wives.
Oh,
I
okay.
was with a woman named Jo Dosay,
Ah,
a fabulous artist. So, and then Margaret. And Jo wasn't around all that long, but she was a true love of Jim's life for several years.
all right.
And then Margaret moved in. And so Jim and I were really good friends, and then Margaret and my wife Robin became really good friends. So, I mean, we were just constantly hanging. Jim wasn't on the road. He was either at my house or we were at his house or something. You know. And
Well, I know you guys were very close. I
yeah,
think we've established that before.
he, you know, he hung out. Loved my kids. So,
I didn't mean to touch that note. I'm sorry.
that's okay.
My attitude is, I'm so blessed that I get a chance to talk with people like yourself, and I don't mean this as condescending or anything like that. I don't deserve the time that I spent with Jim or the people I've met in my life. So when they pass, I'm going, are you kidding me? I caught part of that little flicker that is people's lives. That
Well, one of the things that I think Jim and I always enjoyed between each other was you know, I didn't look at Jim as a music icon.
Right.
I mean, we were friends.
Yeah.
And so, you know, Jim, to me, always had two lives. His life on stage, and when I say on stage, I mean anywhere in public.
Right. Yeah.
And then our life together. And we were just, you know, he was two completely different people.
I think I
He
can
didn't
believe it.
have to try and impress people or get people's attention.
Yeah.
I mean,
Once we got a little past that shield and the comfort level there, we noticed the difference in the person. Yeah.
yeah.
And Jim was famous, and I'll sound redundant on the camera if I play this back to people, but he was famous. If there was a 5-year-old there, he'd find a way to entertain that 5-year-old,
Sure.
and he'd find everybody in between to 90. He
Yeah.
would find something in there to make them
Yeah.
know that Jimmy Post was in their lives, make
That's right.
make their life a little bit better.
Yeah. You know, and that was
As much
what
of a shithead as he could be.
I think he always enjoyed was my kids first, because they were like the kids he never, you know, he had Cheryl,
Right.
but very minimally. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
they were like the kids in his life.
Yeah.
So,
I know that's one of his regrets in his life. Yeah.
yeah. So, he was always, he'd come over and hang out with the kids. So,
And entertained.
yeah, they'd go to his house all the time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, it was truly just, you know, a friendship. And,
That's the way I felt about Jim too.
yeah.
Well, and I apologize for this. I met the senior Jim. If I'd have met the younger Jim, and I don't know that we would have got along. You know, I've heard enough stories of I apologize, but the arrogant Jim. You know, as I heard the stories now, they were much humbler in his senior years than they were when he was younger.
Well, I'm sure they were.
You know, opening for the Cream. That's a height that most people never ever think. You know, and that's just one of those minor side notes that Jim talks about in his life. You know,
Right.
so yeah, it's,
Well, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, you know, like I say.
we're not trying to talk bad about this because
No,
he's
it's just
listening
the way
to us
Jim
right now.
was,
You
you know,
know?
from-
Yeah.
So I'm trying to remember. I mean, I must have met him, I'll say 76, maybe 77. So, that was what, 46 years ago?
Yeah.
You know,
Isn't that something?
and, you know, I mean, the young Jim was a wild and crazy guy, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But, you know, there was two Jims.
Well, and there again, water seeks its own level. I mean, we have to confess that
Right.
there's a reason we hung around those people that were a little bit dangerous because
Right.
we enjoyed that danger around us.
Yeah.
And yeah, when you talk to the stories of Steve Goodman or talk to, you know, the different stories he would tell,
Right.
I was just, you
One
could
day-
see the gleam in his eye.
Yeah, one day Jim, he was going to do a show in Madison with Steve Goodman. Well, he did a show. And Friday, Saturday night, whatever. But Steve came up to the farmhouse like that morning. They were just going to hang out. And Jim calls me up and he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Nothing, just hanging out." And he says, "Okay, we're going to come over." I thought he and Margaret were going to come over. So half an hour later, he shows up, and it's Jim and
Steve
Jim,
Goodman?
Steve Goodman, and John Prine.
Oh, serious.
And Jim didn't know Prine was coming. Prine and Goodman you know, they were
Just-
thick as thieves.
Right.
So Prine just said, "Well, I'm just going to ride along, enjoy the day." So they came and hung out at my house all afternoon, just trading songs and learning each other's songs, and just having a good time. So then, you know, Robin makes some dinner, and we all go to the Goodman Post show in Madison.
My goodness.
So,
Do you mind me asking? Don Greenwood, a friend of ours that's in here, was got to know John quite well, and he was his postman back in the day.
okay.
But everyone I've ever talked with that's ever met Steve Goodman, what was your impersonation or impression of the man?
Well, I guess that wasn't the first time I'd met Steve. I mean, I kind of knew him a little bit from the record business. We put out Steve's first recording him actually singing the city of New Orleans.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh shit! It's legendary.
Well,
It is legendary. I'm
In a
sorry.
way.
See, I'm sitting too high on the level
it
of
was,
where I should.
the album was called Gathering at the Earl of Old Town.
Okay, right.
And that was one of Mountain Railroad's first albums.
No kidding.
So, and Jim produced that album. But,
I
you know, I mean,
Jim
it was,
Post
yeah.
produced Steve's first.
Well, that was a compilation album.
Oh, okay.
You know, a bunch of the people that played at the Earl of Old Town.
Right.
recorded
Oh, okay.
this, you know.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah,
No, I did not know that.
yeah, well,
Thank you.
we probably sold, you know, I don't know, 200-300 copies.